My name is Abigail Morgan, 36 years old, and I never thought I would be making emergency childcare arrangements from a hospital gurney while my parents refused to help with my 4-year-old twins. The pain in my abdomen was excruciating, but nothing compared to the ache in my heart when they said I was being a nuisance and a burden because they had Elton John tickets with my sister. Sometimes, the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you beyond words. Before I get into this painful story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you have ever been let down by family. Now let me tell you how I ended up cutting all ties with the people who raised me. I had always been the responsible one in my family. Even as a child, I seemed to be the adult in the room. My parents, Harold and Martha Morgan, were never the warm, nurturing type. They were successful professionals, my father, a corporate attorney, and my mother, a real estate mogul. They provided well financially, but emotional support was non-existent. My younger sister, Diane, was always their favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong. I followed their expectations perfectly. I graduated top of my class from Stanford with a business degree, got my MBA, and secured a high-paying job at a financial consulting firm. I even married someone they approved of, James, a surgeon from a well-connected family. Everything was according to their master plan for me. James and I were happy for several years. We bought a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood in Connecticut, just 30 minutes from my parents. My career was thriving, and I was making a significant income handling investment portfolios for wealthy clients. I was even helping my parents manage their retirement accounts and had set up college funds for my sister Diane's 2 children. We were the picture-perfect family on paper. Then came the first deviation from their plan. After 3 years of marriage, James and I decided to start a family. We were overjoyed when I became pregnant with twins. My parents' reaction was lukewarm at best. Mom worried about my career trajectory being derailed, while Dad calculated the financial impact. Diane seemed annoyed that I was stealing attention away from her children. The pregnancy was difficult from the beginning. At 20 weeks, I was diagnosed with placenta previa and put on partial bed rest. James was supportive, but his demanding schedule as a cardiothoracic surgeon meant he was rarely home. I asked my parents for help occasionally, just someone to bring groceries or check in, but they always had excuses. Dad was too busy with work. Mom had charity functions. They could send their housekeeper instead. When Emma and Ethan were born at 35 weeks, they were small but healthy. I fell in love with them instantly. Those tiny fingers wrapping around mine, their innocent eyes looking up at me. I had never experienced such overwhelming love. For the first time in my life, I knew what unconditional love felt like. I took 6 months of maternity leave, cherishing every moment with my babies. James and I were exhausted, but happy. The twins brought us closer together, and we navigated the challenges of parenthood as a team. We hired a nanny, Lisa, to help when I returned to work. She was a godsend, loving and attentive with the children. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Then our world shattered. 2 days after the twins' 2nd birthday, James was driving home from a late-night emergency surgery when he fell asleep at the wheel. His car veered off the road and hit a tree. He died instantly. My soulmate, my partner, the father of my children, was gone in an instant. I was devastated. The twins were too young to understand what happened, just that Daddy was suddenly gone. I took extended leave from work to help them cope and to process my own grief. During this time, I expected my family to rally around us. Instead, they kept their distance. Mom sent flowers, and Dad helped with the funeral arrangements, but the emotional support I desperately needed never came. When I returned to work, I reduced my hours to be more present for Emma and Ethan. My boss was understanding, but I still earned more than enough to support us comfortably. I was also sitting on a substantial life insurance payout from James' policy. We were financially secure, but emotionally, I was struggling to be both mother and father to two toddlers while processing my own grief. I reached out to my parents more during this time, not just for practical help, but for emotional support too. Their response was always the same. They were busy. I needed to be stronger. I was being too dependent. Meanwhile, they had no problem asking me for financial advice or help with their investments. They also expected me to continue funding my niece and nephew's college accounts, which I did without complaint. As the twins approached their 4th birthday, I settled into our new normal. Lisa still worked for us part-time, and I had found a rhythm balancing work and single motherhood. Emma and Ethan were thriving despite everything. Emma was artistic and sensitive, while Ethan was curious and adventurous. They were the light of my life, my reason for pushing forward each day. I never expected what happened next. Never imagined I would be faced with such betrayal from the people who were supposed to be my safety net. But life has a way of revealing people's true colors when you need them most. It started as a normal Tuesday morning. I woke up with a slight discomfort in my abdomen, but dismissed it as indigestion from the spicy Thai food I had eaten the night before. I got the twins ready for preschool, dropping them off with a kiss and a promise to pick them up at 3. Lisa had the day off for a family wedding, so I was handling everything solo. By noon, the discomfort had morphed into a persistent pain that made it difficult to concentrate on work. I took some antacids and tried to push through my meetings. By 2 in the afternoon, the pain had intensified significantly. It was radiating across my lower abdomen and into my back. Something was definitely wrong. I called my doctor, who advised me to go to the emergency room immediately. It could be appendicitis, she warned. I looked at the clock, panicking about the twins. School pickup was in an hour, and I had no backup plan. Lisa was unavailable, and my usual emergency contacts were either out of town or unreachable. With no other options, I called my parents. Dad answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello, Abigail. This is not a good time. Your mother and I are getting ready to go out." "Dad, I need help. I think I need to go to the hospital. The doctor thinks it might be appendicitis. I need someone to pick up Emma and Ethan from school." There was a pause, then a muffled conversation with my mother. "Abigail, we have tickets for Elton John's farewell tour tonight. We have been looking forward to this for months. We are meeting Diane and going for dinner first." I could not believe what I was hearing. I was in serious pain and worried about a potential medical emergency. "Dad, please. I would not ask if it was not an emergency. I do not have anyone else right now." Another pause, longer this time. "Your mother says this is very inconsiderate of you. You know we had these plans. Why do you always have to be such a nuisance? I was potentially facing emergency surgery, worrying about my children, and I was being a nuisance. You have Lisa. Call her. She is at a wedding. Dad, please. I just need you to pick up the kids and watch them until I can make other arrangements. It might not even be appendicitis. I might be home tonight." I heard my mother's voice in the background. "Let me talk to her." My mother came on the line, her voice cold and annoyed. "Abigail, you have always been dramatic. Take some Tylenol and lie down. If you still feel bad in the morning, go to urgent care." "Mom, my doctor told me to go to the ER now. She thinks it might be my appendix." "And what do you expect us to do with 2 4-year-olds all night?" "We have plans. Very expensive plans that cannot be changed. You have always been like this, making your problems everyone else's burden." Her words stung more than the pain in my side. A burden. That is how they saw me. That is how they saw my children. "Mom, they are your grandchildren. I am your daughter. I need help." You should have thought about emergencies when you decided to have children, especially after James died. "We told you it would be too much, but you never listen. Now you expect us to drop everything because you have a stomachache." I was speechless. The pain was getting worse and I was getting desperate. "Fine. I will figure it out myself. I always do. Yes, you do that, I told her smugly. We will see you next week for Sunday dinner as planned. Try to be less dramatic by then. She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my desk, doubled over in pain, tears streaming down my face. Not from the physical discomfort, but from the emotional blow. My own parents had just refused to help me during a medical emergency because I was a nuisance and because Elton John was more important than their daughter and grandchildren. I called my neighbor Sarah, who I was friendly with but not close to. Explaining my situation through gasps of pain, I asked if she could possibly pick up the twins from school. To my relief, she agreed without hesitation. I promised to make other arrangements as soon as possible and thanked her profusely. Next, I called an Uber to take me to the hospital. As I waited, doubled over on my couch, I made another call. This time to an emergency nanny service I had researched but never used. They charged premium rates but could provide vetted qualified childcare with minimal notice. The intake coordinator was sympathetic to my situation and promised to send someone to Sarah's house within the hour. I gave them Sarah's address and contact information. The Uber arrived, and I could barely walk to the car. The driver, seeing my condition, helped me in and drove quickly to the nearest hospital. By the time I arrived at the ER, the pain was unbearable. The triage nurse took one look at me and rushed me through. Everything happened in a blur after that. Blood tests, physical examination, a CT scan. The diagnosis came quickly: acute appendicitis with signs of rupture. I needed emergency surgery immediately. As they prepared me for the operating room, I made frantic calls to ensure the twins were okay. Sarah confirmed the emergency nanny Jessica had arrived and seemed very professional and kind. The twins were confused, but doing fine for now. As I was wheeled into surgery, tears ran down my temples into my hair. Not from fear of the procedure, but from the painful realization that the people who should care most about me had abandoned me when I needed them most. I felt utterly alone, despite having just arranged care for my children with strangers who showed more compassion than my own family. The surgery went well, but my appendix had partially ruptured, complicating my recovery. I would need to stay in the hospital for several days. From my hospital bed, I coordinated with the nanny agency to provide round-the-clock care for Emma and Ethan. I spoke to the twins on video calls, trying to explain why Mommy was not coming home yet, assuring them that Jessica was there to take good care of them until I got better. I did not call my parents to tell them about the surgery. I did not tell them I was hospitalized. If Elton John was more important than a medical emergency, they did not deserve to know. Besides, they had made it abundantly clear that my problems were a burden to them. As I lay in that hospital bed in pain and worried about my children, something shifted inside me. The hurt crystallized into resolve. I had spent my entire life seeking approval and support from people who were incapable of giving it. I had maintained ties out of obligation and hoped that someday they would be the parents I needed. But in that moment of crisis, they had shown me exactly who they were and how little I and my children meant to them. It was time to stop expecting water from a stone. It was time to protect myself and my children from people who viewed us as inconveniences. It was time to cut ties. The decision to cut ties with my parents was not made lightly, nor was it based solely on this one incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional neglect and disappointment. But their refusal to help during a medical emergency was the breaking point. I could forgive many things, but I could not forgive them putting concert tickets above the welfare of their daughter and grandchildren. On my third day in the hospital, I called my financial advisor, Maxwell Peterson. Max had been managing my investments since before James died and was someone I trusted implicitly. I explained that I wanted to make some significant changes to my financial arrangements with my family. I want to remove myself as the manager of my parents' retirement accounts. I also want to stop the monthly contributions to my niece and nephew's college funds. Are you sure about this, Abigail? Your parents' accounts have been doing exceptionally well under your management. Max sounded concerned. I am sure. I can no longer be responsible for their financial well-being. They need to find another advisor. And the college funds for your sister's kids transfer whatever is currently in those accounts to their names, but stop all future contributions from my end. I will be setting up new education funds solely for Emma and Ethan. Max did not ask for details, which I appreciated. He promised to make the arrangements and send me the paperwork to sign electronically. I also instructed him to begin the process of removing my parents as backup beneficiaries on my life insurance policy and changing my will to ensure they would never have guardianship of the twins if something happened to me. Next, I called my lawyer, Patricia Garcia, to formalize these changes. I also discussed setting up a trust for Emma and Ethan with a trusted friend as trustee, bypassing my family entirely. Patricia was efficient and non-judgmental, promising to have documents ready for my signature within days. The last call was the hardest. I phoned my parents' home knowing it was around the time they would be having their morning coffee. My father answered, sounding cheerful. Good morning, Abigail. How was your week? His casual tone infuriated me. No inquiry about my health, no follow-up after I had told them I needed to go to the ER. I had emergency surgery 3 days ago. Dad, my appendix ruptured. A pause. What? Why didn't you tell us? I tried to. You and Mom were too busy with your Elton John concert. You called me a nuisance and a burden when I asked for help with the twins. Now, Abigail, I am sure that is not exactly what happened. We were just surprised by the timing and… Stop. I do not want to hear excuses. I am calling to let you know that I am making some changes. I will no longer be managing your retirement accounts. Max Peterson will contact you about transferring them to another advisor. But you have always handled those. You know our financial situation better than anyone. Not anymore. I am also stopping all contributions to Diane's children's college funds. The money that has accrued will stay in their names, but there will be no further deposits from me. You cannot be serious. Is this some sort of tantrum because we could not babysit on short notice? I nearly laughed at his characterization. Emergency surgery was reduced to needing a babysitter. My life-threatening medical situation was a tantrum. This is not a tantrum, Dad. This is a boundary. You and Mom have made it clear where I stand in your list of priorities. I am simply adjusting my behavior accordingly. I will not be at Sunday dinner this weekend or any other weekend. The twins and I will not be attending family functions going forward. His tone changed, growing defensive and angry. You are being ridiculous and ungrateful. After everything we have done for you. What exactly have you done for me? Dad, paid for an education that I have repaid tenfold through managing your finances. Offered conditional love based on how well I followed your life plan for me. Abandoned me when I was recently widowed with 2 small children. Now you are just being cruel. Your mother will be very hurt by this. My mother called me a burden when I was in excruciating pain and facing emergency surgery. I think she will survive the financial inconvenience. You will regret this, Abigail. Families stick together. That is exactly my point, Dad. When it mattered most, you and Mom did not stick with me. You chose Elton John. I simply do not have space in my life for people who see me and my children as inconveniences, even if they are biologically related to us. I did not wait for his response. I ended the call, my heart pounding, but my mind surprisingly calm. It felt like putting down a heavy backpack I had been carrying for years. The weight of seeking their approval of maintaining a relationship that brought me nothing but disappointment was finally lifted from my shoulders. The nurses noticed a change in me that day. One commented that I seemed more relaxed despite my physical discomfort. Another said I had a new light in my eyes. They were right. Amid the physical pain of recovery, I felt a profound emotional relief. I was no longer tethered to people who could not love me the way I deserved to be loved. I spent the next 2 days focusing on my recovery and coordinating with Jessica about the twins. She sent me photos and videos throughout the day showing Emma and Ethan playing, eating, and going about their routines. They missed me terribly, but they were safe and well cared for. Jessica had even taken them to visit me in the hospital, once carefully explaining all the tubes and machines in a way that did not frighten them. On the 5th day, I was discharged with strict instructions to rest and avoid lifting anything heavier than a gallon of milk for at least 2 weeks. Jessica drove me home and helped me settle in. I had arranged for her to stay with us full-time until I was recovered enough to manage on my own. The twins were ecstatic to have me home, covering me with kisses and showing me all the drawings they had made for me while I was away. I held them close, inhaling their sweet scent, thanking whatever powers existed that I had these 2 perfect souls in my life. They were my real family. They were all I needed. The first week of recovery passed without any contact from my parents. I was not surprised. They were likely waiting for me to apologize to come crawling back and resume my role as the dutiful daughter who managed their money and never asked for emotional support in return. But that person was gone, left behind in a hospital bed, and replaced by someone who valued herself too much to accept scraps of affection. I focused on healing both physically and emotionally. I spent quality time with Emma and Ethan, read books I had been meaning to get to, and even started thinking about changes I wanted to make in our lives. Perhaps a move to a different area somewhere with no memories of my parents' occasional obligatory visits. Somewhere we could start fresh. I had no idea that my decision would trigger such a dramatic reaction. No idea that my parents, who had always been so emotionally distant, would suddenly decide that they wanted to be part of our lives again. No idea that their version of reconciliation would look so much like manipulation. But that is exactly what happened 2 weeks after I cut ties. I was still recovering from surgery, moving carefully around the house, and relying heavily on Jessica for help with the twins. It was a Saturday morning, and I was sitting on the patio watching Emma and Ethan play in the backyard when the doorbell rang. Jessica went to answer it while I slowly got to my feet, curious about who would be visiting unannounced. I heard voices in the entryway, one of them unmistakably my mother's imperious tone. My stomach clenched, the surgical site suddenly throbbing. I was not ready for this confrontation, had not prepared myself for seeing them face to face. Jessica appeared in the doorway to the patio, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Morgan, your parents are here. They are insisting on seeing you and the children." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Thank you, Jessica. Could you please take the twins upstairs for their bath? I would rather they did not see their grandparents right now." She nodded, understanding the subtext. She went to the yard and ushered the children inside, distracting them with talk of bubble bath and toys so they did not notice the visitors. I walked slowly to the living room where my parents stood, looking out of place and uncomfortable. My mother was impeccably dressed, as always, not a hair out of place. My father looked tired, the lines around his mouth deeper than I remembered. "Abigail." My mother began, her voice artificially warm. "We have been so worried about you. Why didn't you tell us you were having surgery?" I gestured to the couch, partly because I wanted them to sit, and partly because I needed to. The pain medication was wearing off and standing was becoming difficult. "I did tell you, Mom. You were too busy with your concert to care." "Now that is not fair," my father interjected. "We had no idea how serious it was. You just said you had a stomach ache. I told you my doctor said it was likely appendicitis and that I needed to go to the ER immediately. You called me a nuisance and a burden." My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but quickly recovered. "Well, you have always been prone to exaggeration, dear. How were we to know this time was different?" I stared at her, astounded by her ability to rewrite history. The fact that I specifically said it was a medical emergency and that my doctor told me to go to the ER immediately should have been your first clue. My father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Regardless, we are here now. We want to help. Your mother and I have been talking, and we realize we may have been somewhat. He paused, searching for a word that would not admit too much fault distant lately. Lately, I repeated incredulously. You have been emotionally distant my entire life. That is a harsh assessment, Abigail, my mother said, her lips thinning in displeasure. We gave you everything, the best schools, the best opportunities, except the one thing I actually needed your emotional support and unconditional love. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father was the first to break it. We understand you are upset about what happened before your surgery. It was unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing, I repeated, my voice flat. Is that what you call abandoning your daughter during a medical emergency? We did not abandon you, my mother insisted. We simply had prior commitments. To see Elton John with Diane, I know. More important than your daughter possibly dying from a ruptured appendix. You did not die, my father pointed out, as if that negated everything. No thanks to you, I replied. Another silence, heavier this time. I could see my parents exchanging glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice softer than before. We have come to apologize, Abigail. We were wrong not to help you that day. We should have been there for you and the children. I studied her face, looking for sincerity. There was some there, mixed with something else. Calculation. I had seen that look before when she was negotiating a particularly difficult real estate deal. What prompted this sudden realization, I asked. Was it the loss of your investment manager, or the hit to your social standing when people found out you chose a concert over your daughter's emergency surgery? My father flushed, a sure sign I had hit close to the mark. That is uncalled for, he said stiffly. We are trying to make amends. No, you are trying to regain control, I corrected him. You realize that without me managing your finances and funding Diane's children's education, you would have to make some adjustments. You did not like that. My mother's pleasant mask slipped a little. Is it so wrong to want our family back together, to want to be part of our grandchildren's lives? It is wrong to think you can treat people however you want and face no consequences. It is wrong to offer an insincere apology, motivated by financial self-interest rather than genuine remorse. You are being unreasonable, my father said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Everyone makes mistakes. We are trying to fix this. I shook my head slowly. This is not about one mistake, Dad. It is about a lifetime of conditional love and emotional neglect. It is about you and Mom consistently prioritizing everything else above me and my children. The concert was just the final straw. My mother leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. And what about your sister? Are you punishing her children by withdrawing their college funds? They are innocent in all this. I am not punishing anyone, Mom. I am reallocating my resources to support the people who actually matter in my life, my children. Diane and her husband make more than enough to fund their kids' education. They just preferred using my money instead. This is about the favoritism, isn't it? My mother said, finally addressing the elephant in the room. You have always been jealous of the attention we gave Diane. It is not jealousy to want your parents to love you, I replied quietly. It is a basic human need, one that you never fulfilled. My father stood up abruptly. We did not come here to be insulted and accused. We came to offer an olive branch. No, you came here to manipulate me into resuming financial support and pretending everything is fine, as I have done my entire life. But I am not doing that anymore. My mother's face hardened, her true colors finally showing through the veneer of concerned parent. So, that is it. You are cutting us off completely, because we could not drop everything for you one time." I almost laughed at her characterization. One time, you have never been there for me emotionally. Not when I was struggling in college, not when James and I had marital problems, not when he died, and I was left alone with 2 toddlers. You have consistently shown me where I stand in your priorities, and it is nowhere near the top. My father stepped in his tone conciliatory, but his eyes cold. "Perhaps we should all take some time to cool down. We can discuss the financial arrangements later when emotions are not running so high." And there it was, the real reason for their visit, the financial arrangements. Not concern for me, not love for their grandchildren, but money. "There is nothing to discuss," I said firmly. "My decision is final. I will not be managing your investments anymore, and I will not be funding Diane's children's education. If that is the only reason you wanted to reconcile, you can leave now." My mother stood up, gathering her designer purse with trembling hands. "You will regret this, Abigail. Families should stick together. Who will help you the next time you have an emergency? The same people who helped me this time, strangers who showed more compassion than my own parents. The nanny I hired from my hospital bed, my neighbor who barely knows me, but immediately offered to help the nurses who held my hand before surgery because I had no family there. Those people will help me, and they will do it without making me feel like a burden." My parents looked at each other, finally realizing that this was not a negotiation. I was not going to back down. "The door is that way," I said, pointing to the hallway. "Please do not come back unless you are genuinely ready to be the parents and grandparents we deserve, not the ones who see us as financial assets or inconveniences." They left without another word, my mother's heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. My father's shoulders rigid with indignation. The front door closed with a final sounding click, and I slumped back on the couch, exhausted but oddly peaceful. Jessica appeared in the doorway, concern written all over her face. "Are you okay? The children are playing in their room. They did not see your parents." I smiled at her, grateful for her discretion and care. "I am okay. Better than I have been in a long time, actually." And I meant it, despite the pain of the confrontation, despite the sadness of officially losing the family I had been born into. I felt liberated. I had finally stood up for myself and my children. I had finally demanded the respect and love we deserved. As I sat there in the quiet aftermath, I realized that family is not defined by blood, but by love, support, and respect. I had spent too long trying to squeeze water from a stone, seeking emotional sustenance from people incapable of providing it. It was time to focus on building a family of choice, surrounding myself and my children with people who truly cared about us. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be awkward family events to avoid explanations, to give perhaps even attempts by my parents to reestablish contact on their terms. But I was stronger now. Surgery had removed not just my inflamed appendix, but also the unhealthy attachment to people who could not love me the way I needed to be loved. As if on cue, I heard the patter of small feet on the stairs. Emma and Ethan appeared freshly bathed and in their pajamas despite the early hour. They climbed carefully onto the couch beside me, mindful of my surgery site, as Jessica had surely instructed them. "Are you feeling better, Mommy?" Emma asked, her little face serious. "Much better now, sweetheart," I replied, pulling her close. "Can we watch a movie together?" Ethan suggested, his eyes hopeful. "That sounds perfect," I said, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against mine, the unconditional love that flowed between us. As Jessica set up their favorite animated film, I looked at my 2 beautiful children and knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right choice. This was my family. This was all I needed. Everything else was just noise. In the months that followed my decision to cut ties with my parents, our lives changed in ways both subtle and profound. The most immediate change was the absence of Sunday dinners at my parents' house, those stiff, formal affairs, where the twins and I always felt like unwelcome guests. Instead, we established our own Sunday tradition pancakes in pajamas, followed by an outing to a park museum or whatever caught the children's interest that week. Without the constant undercurrent of disapproval and judgment from my parents, I found myself more relaxed and present with Emma and Ethan. They noticed the change in me, commenting that I laughed more and seemed happier. Children are perceptive that way. They can sense when the emotional weather has cleared, even if they do not understand the storms that came before. My sister Diane called about 3 weeks after my confrontation with our parents. I had expected her call much sooner, assuming my parents would immediately enlist her in their campaign to bring me back into the fold. Her delay in reaching out spoke volumes about her priorities. "What were you thinking, Abigail?" she demanded without preamble when I answered. "Mom and Dad are beside themselves, and I just found out you pulled funding for my kids' college accounts." "Hello to you too, Diane," I replied calmly. "I am recovering well from my emergency surgery, thanks for asking." She had the grace to pause momentarily. "I heard about that. I'm sorry you were sick, but that does not explain why you are punishing my children." "I am not punishing your children. I am simply redirecting my financial resources to my own family. Your children still have the money I have already contributed. I am just not adding more. But we were counting on that money for their education. You and Brandon make over $400,000 a year combined. You can afford to save for your own children's education?" "That is not the point," she huffed. "Family helps family. That is what we do." "Is it?" I asked. "Because when I needed help during a medical emergency, our parents refused because they had concert tickets with you. Where was family helps family then?" "That was unfortunate timing," she admitted, echoing our father's dismissive phrase. "But you know how long they had been looking forward to that concert? Elton John is Dad's favorite." I nearly laughed at the absurdity of her defense. More favorite than his daughter and grandchildren, apparently. "You are being dramatic. It was just one evening. It was emergency surgery, Diane. My appendix ruptured. I could have died. But you didn't. No, I did not. No thanks to any of you." There was a moment of silence on the line. "Look," she said finally, her voice softening into the cajoling tone she had used since childhood to get her way. "We all make mistakes. Mom and Dad feel terrible about what happened. They want to make it up to you. Can't you just forgive them and move on?" I thought carefully before responding, determined not to let my sister manipulate me as she had so many times in the past. Forgiveness does not mean allowing people to continue treating you badly. I may eventually forgive them, but that does not mean I have to resume a relationship that has been consistently harmful to me and my children. What do you want from them? An apology. I am sure they would apologize if that would fix things. I want them to genuinely understand how their behavior has affected me throughout my life, not just in this one instance. I want them to respect my boundaries and treat me and my children with the love and consideration we deserve. But I do not think they are capable of that. Of course, they love you, Abigail. You are their daughter. Love is not just a label, Diane. It is actions. It is showing up when someone needs you. It is putting their needs above concert tickets." She sighed, clearly frustrated by my refusal to cave. "So that is it. You are just cutting them off completely." "For now, yes. I need space to heal, not just from surgery, but from years of emotional neglect. If they ever truly understand what they did wrong and want to build a healthy relationship, I might reconsider." but I am not holding my breath. And the college funds? Those are not coming back, I said firmly. I have my own children to provide for. This is so selfish of you, she snapped, reverting to her usual tactic of making me the villain. No, Diane. Selfish is expecting someone else to fund your children's education while offering nothing in return. Selfish is calling someone who just had emergency surgery to complain about money rather than to check on their well-being. She did not have a response to that, and the call ended shortly after with her promising that I would regret pushing away my family. It was remarkably similar to what my parents had said, as if they were reading from the same script of emotional manipulation. I did not regret my decision. Not when my parents sent flying monkeys in the form of extended family members to plead their case. Not when they attempted to guilt me through mutual acquaintances. Not even when my mother sent a tear-stained letter describing how much she missed the twins without ever acknowledging the real issues at hand. Instead, I focused on building a support network of people who genuinely cared about us. Sarah, my neighbor, who had helped during my emergency, became a close friend. Her children were slightly older than the twins, but enjoyed playing with them. We started having regular playdates and family dinners together. I also connected with a support group for single parents, finding solidarity and understanding among others navigating similar challenges. Through the group, I met Amanda, a widow with a 5-year-old son who lived nearby. Our shared experiences created an immediate bond, and our children got along wonderfully. She became my emergency contact, and I became hers, a mutual safety net built on trust and reciprocity. Lisa, our part-time nanny, remained a constant in our lives, providing not just childcare, but genuine affection for Emma and Ethan. Jessica, who had been our emergency nanny during my hospitalization, stayed in touch and occasionally filled in when Lisa was unavailable. Both women became part of our chosen family, demonstrating that care and support could come from unexpected places. At work, I adjusted my schedule to better balance my professional responsibilities with single parenthood. My boss, impressed by my dedication and productivity, despite personal challenges, offered me a more flexible arrangement that allowed for remote work 2 days a week. This reduced my commute time and gave me more hours with the twins. 6 months after my surgery, I took the twins on our first vacation without extended family a week at a beach resort where we built sandcastles, splashed in the waves, and stayed up late watching movies in our hotel room. It was during this trip, watching Emma and Ethan laugh as they chased seagulls along the shore, that I realized how much lighter we all felt without the weight of my parents' disapproval hanging over us. Financially, we continued to thrive. Without the drain of managing my parents' investments and funding my niece and nephew's education, I could focus on securing our own future. I increased my retirement contributions added to the twins' college funds, and even started looking into buying a vacation property, a small cabin by a lake where we could escape during school breaks. My parents made one last attempt at reconciliation around the twins' 5th birthday. They sent extravagant gifts and a card suggesting they host a party at their house. I returned the gifts with a note explaining that reconciliation would require genuine acknowledgement of the harm they had caused and a commitment to change, not bribery through presents. They did not respond, and I took their silence as confirmation that they were not truly interested in healing our relationship, only in regaining control. The twins occasionally asked about their grandparents, but with less frequency as time passed. I was honest with them in an age-appropriate way, explaining that sometimes people do not treat each other kindly, and it is okay to take a break from relationships that make you sad. I assured them that they were deeply loved by many people, including our chosen family of friends who showed up for birthdays, school events, and ordinary Tuesday afternoons. As I approached the 1-year anniversary of my surgery and subsequent decision to cut ties with my toxic family, I reflected on how much had changed. The initial pain and uncertainty had given way to a sense of peace and self-assurance that I had never experienced before. I no longer doubted my worth or questioned whether I deserved better treatment. I knew that I did, and more importantly, I knew that my children did too. The journey had not been easy. There were still moments of sadness, particularly during holidays or when I saw other families with doting grandparents. But these pangs were fleeting, quickly replaced by gratitude for the authentic connections we had formed and the healthy boundaries we had established. In choosing to prioritize my own well-being and that of my children, I had finally broken free from the cycle of seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. I had discovered that family is not defined by blood, but by love, respect, and showing up when it matters most. The family we had created might be unconventional, a tapestry of friends, caregivers, and fellow single parents, but it was real and nurturing in ways my biological family had never been. As Emma and Ethan grew, I knew they would face their own challenges and disappointments. But I hoped that by witnessing my journey to self-respect and healthy boundaries, they would learn valuable lessons about their own worth, that they would never accept being called a nuisance or a burden by people who claimed to love them, that they would recognize the difference between genuine care and manipulation disguised as concern. Most of all, I hoped they would understand that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from relationships that diminish you, even when those relationships are with family. That sometimes cutting ties is not an ending, but a beginning, the first step toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. Looking back on that fateful day when my appendix nearly ruptured, I realize it was both an ending and a beginning. The physical pain was excruciating, but the emotional wound of being called a nuisance and a burden by my own parents cut far deeper. Yet from that painful experience came an unexpected gift, the clarity to finally see my family for who they truly were, and the courage to choose a different path for myself and my children. The healing process was not linear. There were days when I questioned my decision, moments when I picked up the phone to call my parents, only to put it down again, remembering why I had set this boundary in the first place. There were nights when I cried for the family I wished I had rather than the one I was born into. Grief does not disappear overnight, even when the loss is of something that never truly existed, like unconditional parental love. But each day became a little easier as I built a life centered around genuine connections rather than obligatory ones. Emma and Ethan flourished in this environment of authentic love and support. They grew more confident, more joyful, more secure in the knowledge that they were valued for exactly who they were, not for how well they met someone else's expectations. 1 year and 3 months after cutting ties with my parents, I received an unexpected letter. It was from my father, handwritten rather than typed, the penmanship slightly shaky, in a way I had never seen before. He wrote that my mother had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. The prognosis was good, but the experience had made them both reevaluate their priorities. For the first time, the letter contained a genuine apology, not just for the Elton John incident, but for a lifetime of emotional distance and conditional love. My father acknowledged that they had been better providers than parents, that they had seen me more as an extension of themselves than as an individual with my own needs and feelings. He expressed regret for the way they had treated me after James died, and for their consistent favoritism toward Diane. It was the apology I had always wanted but never expected to receive. My first instinct was skepticism, wondering if this was another manipulation tactic. But something about the vulnerability in his words, the absence of demands or expectations, made me think it might be sincere. I responded cautiously, expressing sympathy for my mother's health challenges and acknowledging his apology. I made it clear that while I appreciated his words, rebuilding trust would be a long process that would require consistent actions, not just promises. I also established firm boundaries about how any potential reconciliation would proceed, emphasizing that my primary responsibility was to protect myself and my children from further harm. To my surprise, my father accepted these terms without argument. We began with occasional phone calls, just the two of us gradually working toward a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect, rather than obligation. My mother joined these calls after completing her treatment her brush with mortality, having seemingly softened some of her sharp edges. Our first in-person meeting was on neutral territory, a restaurant halfway between our homes, without the twins present. It was awkward, but civil, with moments of genuine connection interspersed with old patterns trying to reassert themselves. It was a beginning, not a resolution. Over the next few months, as my parents consistently showed up in the ways I had requested, respecting my boundaries and acknowledging past hurts rather than dismissing them, I cautiously allowed them back into our lives in a limited capacity. They met the twins for ice cream, showed up for a school play, sent thoughtful rather than extravagant birthday gifts. They were not perfect. Old habits emerged occasionally, requiring gentle but firm correction. But for the first time in my life, they seemed willing to listen and learn to see me as a person worthy of respect, rather than a checkbook to be utilized or an inconvenience to be tolerated. I never resumed managing their finances, maintaining that boundary as a symbol of our new relationship. This was not about money or obligation, but about choice and genuine connection. To their credit, they never asked me to reconsider, seeming to understand that some changes were permanent. My relationship with Diane remained complicated. She viewed my boundaries as an attack, my insistence on respect as unreasonable. We maintained minimal contact, civil but distant, like acquaintances rather than sisters. Perhaps someday that too would heal, but I was no longer willing to force connections that brought more pain than joy. The true measure of my healing came not in these tentative steps toward reconciliation, but in the knowledge that I no longer needed my parents' approval to feel complete. Whether our new relationship flourished or faltered, I would be okay. I had built a life filled with love and support, a chosen family that showed up not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Emma and Ethan were now 6, starting first grade with confidence and curiosity. They had adjusted to the changes in our family dynamic with the resilience children often show when surrounded by love and honesty. They understood in their own way that relationships should make you feel good, not sad or afraid or unimportant. As for me, I had found strength I never knew. I possessed the courage to stand up for myself and my children, even when it meant standing alone. I had learned that sometimes the most powerful word in any language is no, that boundaries are not selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships, and that being called difficult is often the price of refusing to be mistreated. Most importantly, I had discovered that family is not determined by blood, but by love, not by obligation, but by choice. The people who show up for you in an emergency, who hold your hand when you are scared, who celebrate your joys and comfort your sorrows, those are your true family, regardless of DNA. So, if you are struggling with toxic family relationships, if you have been called a nuisance or a burden by the people who should love you most, know this, you deserve better. You deserve to be surrounded by people who value you, who see your worth, who show up when it matters. And sometimes finding those people means having the courage to walk away from those who do not. My journey is still unfolding, as all our stories are. There will be more challenges, more decisions to make, more boundaries to enforce or adjust. But I face the future with a confidence I never had before, secure in the knowledge that I have the strength to protect myself and my children from anyone who would diminish us, even if they share our name or our blood. Because the most important lesson I learned from being abandoned during my emergency surgery was this: I am not a nuisance. I am not a burden. I am a person worthy of love and respect. And so are you. If you have ever had to cut ties with toxic family members, I would love to hear your experience in the comments below. How did you handle it? What helped you move forward? And please subscribe if this story resonated with you, and hit that like button to help others find this video. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are not alone in this journey.